Marketing podcast is kindly sponsored by Nicks and Kicks, the low-calorie, no added sugar, vegan-friendly drink with a zing. At Target, we always have a fully stocked fridge of Nicks and Kicks as a healthy and tasty refreshment for the team. Try it yourself today in a Co-op or Waitrose near you, or you can buy it online at nicksandkicks.com. Miracle, thanks for joining us on the Performance Marketing Podcast. For those that don't know, Miracle and Inameti-Archibong is the SEO lead currently at John Lewis Finance. Previously worked in SEO at MoneySuperMarket and has tons of experience, 10 years plus, both agency and client side. So Miracle, could you start us off by really adding some meat to the bones, a little bit about your career and how you got into SEO?
I mean, like most people, SEO was not something I can know about. You know, when I came to the UK to do a master's program, and I did a master's in digital media. I was looking at behind the scenes because in Nigeria I used to produce movies, and I was looking at editing and behind the scenes and that kind of thing. And on my course there was a marketing bit of it, and I'd always been interested in like psychology and the science of why people do things, but there was just no vocabulary for that in Nigeria, and I didn't really explore that option. But when I came here, that was like a path that was open to me. So I really got interested in marketing, and then I started my first internship role, and the marketing turned out to be PPC. And then that was not really, I found it to be very kind of formulaic. You do this, you do that. I'm not a process person.
So it wasn't for you.
As you can see by when you're trying to arrange all these things, I am not a process person. So I kind of gravitated towards the SEO team because it was more of a discovery process and kind of like a curiosity. There was no kind of prescriptive or one size fit all. And that's how I just found myself, you know, diving more and more into SEO, and that's how the journey began.
So it's great because I remember sort of, you know, as you do, reading about yourself and listening to a few previous podcasts. I think the thing that really stood out for me about you was your sort of passion and knowledge when it comes to statistical forecasting for SEO. So obviously there's, you know, keyword forecasting, keyword-led forecasting and statistical forecasting. But just to really start things off here, I suppose, how would you define forecasting in SEO, and why is it so important?
I think I always start by saying that forecasting gets such a bad rap because people are always, well, it's not accurate, it's not, you know, and if you go down that route, you kind of miss the point of a forecast. The forecast is saying, you know, give or take, this is what we can achieve, and it's an indication of growth. It helps you set priority, and believe me, I've worked with many a finance team, and their forecasting as well. It's not accurate. No, like I haven't seen it because I'm sort of curious about the way I do forecasting, and then I'll go to these teams and I'll be like, oh, I'm really curious to see the way the finance team does it, because we would like to kind of model that in our SEO way and see if we can get more accurate. And then you sort of realize that, yeah, forecasting is just you know, it's just that this is the projection that our data says we could go, and give or take will be like 5% in or 5% out. But it's really useful for commercial teams. It's useful to help your kind of finance team understand what priorities should be given. It's useful because then you yourself, you can prioritize and say, okay, this is what we should do first, and this is the level of growth we expect. So that's why forecasting is important for SEO.
And I guess also as marketers, of course, we all understand the value and the importance of SEO, but though when you're sort of presenting to the board, those that are perhaps less technically minded, to get them to buy in, I guess having that forecast and being able to tie commercial objectives and, you know, conversions and revenue to SEO is really important to get buy-in at board level, I can imagine.
Yes, it's really important to the C-suite, and I think because, you know, all the marketing channels, this is to say if you spend this in PPC, this is what you expected. They have a direct route to conversion and measurement. It's about being able to measure. And if you can't measure, you can't plan. If you can't measure, you can't give any kind of importance or credence to it. And it's about being able to speak a language that other people understand, because the SEO language is very, yeah, it's not plain and simple, but money language everyone understands. So yeah.
100%. And I guess sort of to get into the bones of things now, there are, you've previously when you've spoken, you've defined sort of two types of forecasting when it comes to SEO. So I think one was keyword-led forecasting and the other was statistical forecasting. So could you sort of define what's the difference between the two, and what are the challenges that come with keyword forecasting?
I think the core difference is the starting point. With keyword forecasting, you have a load of keywords, and then you try to predict based on how the visibility improves, or what kind of financial benefit that will give to the company. With statistical forecasting, you're looking at your own data and say, based on the current visits we have, this is how we can improve and this is how we can grow. And the key difference is just the starting point. I would say I prefer statistical forecasting to keyword. Keyword forecasting started in my early days in SEO. This is over 10 years ago. And it was really easy to do then because give or take, click-through rates were stable, the SEP was very largely the same, But now keyword forecasting is so difficult to do because, there's personalization, if someone clicks, what everyone sees is different. Rankings are never stable throughout the day, let alone for a month. So it's really difficult. I recently did a CTR study with one of my teams, and we found that click-through rates differ so much depending on the time of day, the night. So none of these variables are stable enough for you to accurately predict, But and then imagine if you work for a large enterprise that has, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 keywords.
It's a minefield. Yeah.
It's a minefield. It can get pretty messy quickly. I still use it, and I will use it when I'm doing one-off content pieces. If I have a specific category, I can say, okay, based on this category, this is what we can expect to do. But I would never use it to. Well, I don't really use it to do like large financial forecasting. I prefer to use statistical modeling because then it kind of reduces the variables. It's now this is the traffic we get based on our data, based on the people who click through us. This is personalized. This is our customer-focused data. All of that. And then you can say, okay, based on linear progression, which a lot of finance teams also use, which everyone understands that language. You're not bringing in Google variables that people just feel is a dark art and no one really knows about. This is a language that most CFOs, CMOs understand, and you can be like, based on this, statistical forecast, linear regression, this is what our data is saying that we will go, and that's a more, to me, it's a more kind of acceptable way of benchmarking at C-suite level.
For sure. And I think just coming back to the point about keyword-led forecasting, that there are just so many variables, aren't there? Language, location, no one really knows what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of trends in the market as well. So it is really hard to predict, I suppose. But coming back to your statistical forecasting model, you mentioned linear regression there and exponential smoothing, I think you've talked about before as well. Could you just explain how that works in the context of forecasting?
Yeah, so very simply put, there are more in-depth details explanation, but I won't bore you. But very simply put, it's just understanding how two variables affect a certain outcome. And exponential smoothing helps to kind of gauge like seasonalities. It kind of looks for outliers, and that's why the amount of data you have is really important. Because if you have 1 year data, it can't really pinpoint outliers. But if you have 2-3 year data, it can look at that and be like, oh, okay, this is an anomaly. Oh, this happens every time in June. That's definitely seasonality. Let's not talk about things like COVID. Like just
we're past that now, yeah.
That just kind of throws a whole spanner in the wheel. But it looks at things like that, and it's like, okay, this is an outlier. I'll just model the data from the previous occurrence and just ignore this. Oh no, this is seasonality. I'll add that in, and that's what those two types of
That's really interesting. So do you, in your opinion, do you need at least 2 years in terms of to have statistical significance when you're forecasting? Do you need about 2 years of historical data, more or less?
Yeah, I would say for the best outcome, you need at least 2 years of data. And then it depends on the business. Some businesses don't have that level of volatility or seasonality or stuff. But I would say, I will prefer, I'm more comfortable when I have at least 2 years worth of data.
I guess, and is it possible? I suppose it must be impossible to forecast without data. So, have you ever had an instance where you've had unreliable data? How do you get around those kind of things? Because you must have instances where clients have come to you with bad data, incorrect data, things missing. How do you create a forecast when you've got such a messy data set? You can't.
All the time. You can't. Yeah, all the time. And that's why, there was a study we did, and we found that when I worked agency side, 80% of the Google Analytics account we had some form of, errors in it and stuff like that, which is why, we would always start with kind of like doing a GA audit and kind of trying to clean that data. But then even when you clean the data, then you're not looking historically, are you? So we always say with any forecasting, give or take 5%, out. But then that's why you can't discount keyword forecasting as well, because when you don't have data, you have to go back to keyword forecasting might be the only thing you can use, because you can use, search volume data and kind of play around with keyword rankings in that kind of way.
That's really interesting. So coming back to if I'm a brand marketer here now, or sorry, an SEO, how regularly do you think you should be forecasting? Is it something you should be doing annually, quarterly, or is it really horses for courses depending on the business?
I would say when we start with a forecast, we usually, as soon as we have clean data, we just pipe that in and reforecast. So I would say at least quarterly you should be reforecasting. Yeah.
And is it possible to, again, because we talked about variables in SEO in terms of algorithm updates, seasonality, is it possible to mitigate that, all the unknowns when it comes to forecasting? Is there a way to mitigate that or allow for it? Yeah.
I mean, there's no way of 100% mitigating that. You just have to agree on an acceptable baseline. I think most of these things you have to see it as trend modeling. Is the trend going up or the trend going down? If the trend is going down, then the next course of action is how can we mitigate this? If the trend is going up, then how can we make sure we ensure that the trend goes up? It's in that kind of way, because you can never, kind of account for all the outliers, but it's all about creating a baseline, really.
And in terms of, like if I'm a brand that wants to start forecasting, it's something that we haven't actually explored yet. Where do we begin? Is it a case of getting the data together? What are the metrics we should be looking at? Should we take into account conversion rates and things like that? Where do we begin? How do we start putting together a forecast?
I think, the metrics you should, visits, conversions, average order value, if that's something that you have to get. Those are the three, main things: visits, conversions, and your average order value. And then you can't kind of look at, okay, based on this, what do we expect our click-through rates to be, based on what the data that we already have, and are we, what marketing campaigns are we going to do this time around? Are we putting more money, less money, and then kind of plotting those graphs out. There's an article I wrote, I think, in 2021. I'm sure they're more recent things other people have written out there. So just Google. When I worked at Erudite, it's called Forecasting for SEO, and then you can start there. Or there are other people who've written great things. There are other tools. I think there's a guy called Richard Fergie. Oh, I hope I haven't gotten that wrong. But he has a statistical, forecasting tool as well. The starting point is linear regression, but it has more sophisticated modeling points in, so you can check that out as well.
I'm guessing when you're putting together a forecast as well, it's really important to have probably multiple scenarios as well. Where would you, again, how many scenarios would you create? Would it be a sort of a good, worst scenario? Again, what's your take on that, Miracle?
So I like to do like a 3-point. So there is a do not in scenario, there's the baseline scenario, and there's the overflow pump money in. So it's almost like a stable, a high, and a low, and that's because, as I said, give or take 5% in or out. So I always say to people that an SEO forecast, I like to say, it's like a scenario modeling, because when you try to kind of like, we're going to cover every baseline, make it as accurate, that just kind of, it gets out of hand really quickly. So you take it as a scenario modeling. Our data says if we do nothing, this is the level of growth. If something happens to throw the spanner in the works and we start to decline, this is the rate. Or if we pump in more resources and we grow by 5% or by 10%, this is what it looks like.
That's great. And if just going back to, so we now know, the data we need to begin creating the forecast. We know we need some scenarios. What are the tools as a marketer you need to be able to create these forecasts? Is it something you would do in Excel, or are there other softwares and tools you use to create your forecasts?
I use Excel. I mean, you can use Google Sheets if you're that way inclined. Those are the primary tools. I mean, the most basic tools I use. As you say, that there are other tools out there. I don't know that, but those are my go-to. I mean, there are other softwares as well, which, again, just escape my mind at present. There are other SEO tools that have created, keyword forecast tools within their suites, and there are some that have statistical modeling as well within their suites. jump off my mind. I'm sure, Josh, you can do the research.
No, 100%, of course. I'll put you on the spot there.
And add it to the comments. But for the forecast I usually do, I use Excel.
No, I think it's a tool that everyone's familiar with, isn't it? So it's just something
Yes.
people can get comfortable with and explore, perhaps. But I'd love to know to get to know a little bit more about yourself now, Miracle. I mean, looking back at your SEO career, what are the real sort of challenges you faced? Because SEO changes so much, doesn't it? Google forever releasing updates and the algorithms changing. So what are the sort of the biggest challenges you really faced as an SEO in the last 12 months?
In the last 12 months, that's really interesting. Oh, in the last 12 months. I think in the last 12 months, based on where I am in my career, I would say that the most challenges I faced is getting people to understand what SEO can do. And kind of like stepping on other department toes, because people just kind of think SEO is, you change a few pieces of copy, you move things around, and that's SEO. But what happens beyond when you're ranking in P1 for everything? Then what's the SEO's job there?
Yeah.
And it's the challenge I faced where I'm like, well, SEO is in every pie. You have to think of SEO as almost a product manager, because we have to be like, what affects SEO? SEO is evolving so much. It's not as easy as just changing a piece of copy. It's no longer about what you say about yourself. It's more about what other people say about you, because Google understands all of that signal. So being almost like a brand advocate, stepping on product to be like, well, if we want to be number one, are we really number one? Is the product really servicing the customer? Because if customers are complaining, and then just being that kind of voice of the product, and that's really challenging because other people are like, well, that's not SEO. This is our bit. You go write some content. And it's really interesting, really, because this helpful content debate is something that I've been speaking about, is this content really needed? Is this content really helpful? Not because everyone's targeting it, we should be targeting it. And those are things that I have, been really thinking about in my career over the last 12 months. And then, whilst I was on holiday, Google released this helpful content.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh.
What a way to ruin your holiday.
I was like, yes. But I kind of think it's needed. And I mean, we haven't seen massive effects of it, but I just feel like, I was saying to someone the other day, I was like, SEO has ruined kind of content online.
Yeah.
Like it's really ruined. I'm not going to go into things that people do to make their content rank and make it seem more authoritative. But we kind of need that stick to be like, can we all stop and think that this is not just this is information, especially in your money or your life sector. This is information that people are consuming and making decisions on. I've been to, I've looked at the SEP and tried to get to buy something, and I've seen a website ranking P1 over the strength of the entire website, but not particularly selling what I want to buy, but just like, if you need this, these are 5 ways you can get that kind of, and I'm just like, I want to buy a product that you don't offer. You've just written about this keyword because it has a high search volume, not offering the product. This is very unhelpful, you know. So we all need to kind of sit back and be like, where is our responsibility in this?
How big do you think, it's really interesting you've touched on the helpful content update there, because how big do you think this could be? Because if you look at sort of Panda and Penguin and previous updates, they were sort of there to really clean up the internet, if you like. Do you think, because I know that I'm looking at some websites now, I can think of a couple off the top of my head where you look at a product page and it's crammed with links and paragraphs purely for search engines. What impact do you think this is going to have for brands? I mean, because from what I understand, it's not just the page that's going to be penalised if it's going to be the entire website. So are you seeing any impact currently in your current role with the helpful content update? And do you expect a lot of brands to feel the pinch here with this new update from Google?
I haven't really seen any kind of significant impact. I haven't seen any significant impact. I haven't spoken to anyone who's recorded that. But it's kind of tricky, isn't it? Because helpful content is very, very subjective. But what I think is interesting, and I can't that's the detriment of going in-house. I can't,
of course.
I can't talk about anything.
Yeah, no, of course. I put you on the spot there.
I think what I think is really interesting is to compare different sites and see that there are some sites that have loads and loads of content and still struggle to rank.
Yeah.
And there's some sites that just be like, this is our product and this is our service, and this is what we do. And on the strength of that product, on the strength that everyone loves that product, everyone's using that product, everyone's raving about that product, it just ranks.
Yeah.
And then other people are doing all sorts of things to get content, but it just ranks. And I was really interested in doing a study. Unfortunately, I just didn't have the time because, no longer agency. This is
Of course.
the luxury of that kind of research. But it's really interesting to see like the correlation between brand and product search and generic rankings. Because it all ties back into if your product is good, and I mean, obviously you need to market it for it to be seen somewhere, but I seem to see, Google rewarding, especially in your money or life sector, small brands that have really good products and have less content over bigger brands that have miles and miles of content and have grown from the strength of just their marketing and not the product being excellent. So it's really interesting. I just wonder how the algorithm, because again with these things it's so subjective, but Google can't go reviewing one after the other. So it'll be interesting to see what they plug into that algorithm, and when we start seeing, the effect of this, which brands are hit. From my mind, I can see it'll be easy to hit like affiliate sites that are not, actually, offering the product that they're trying to market and all of those kind of things. But where big credible brands are doing those kind of things, I struggle to see how Google will kind of be like, well, this is not helpful. Yeah, very subjective. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
I'm interested to see how it pans out. Really interested. So coming back to yourself now, Miracle, I'm really interested. You've got some great experience there, client side and in-house, and with MoneySuperMarket and some great brands like John Lewis. What does a typical day look like for you as an SEO, as an SEO lead? Because I can imagine you've got your head in data a lot of the time, and there's so much change, particularly in the sort of search world. What does a typical day look like for you?
I love data, and I sometimes miss large Excel spreadsheets, and I have to stop myself. There's a book I'm reading now, which is like the first 90 days, and it says how you have to stop yourself from just going into the things you love, and then you have to face the things that you need to do. As a leader, I need to be more strategic and think about the overarching direction that we're going in. And so I have to stop myself from just being like, well, I can just do that, and then spending days, doing keyword research. Sadly, I love those things, but that doesn't seem to. That's not my day to day anymore.
Sure.
My day to day is mainly, say, meetings and stakeholder management, and trying to say this is why we're doing this, and kind of advocating for my department, and kind of
Sure.
leading people. Okay, this is what we need to do now, and this is why we're doing it. And yeah, I still do data analysis because I love to understand the data, because if you don't understand why you're doing something, you can't effectively advocate for it. So most of my days is spent on more strategic thinking and leadership than
For sure.
than day-to-day data. But I do. Yesterday I spent some time, doing like creating a template for something, and I was just like, I could just start filling in the information. This would be so relaxing.
I guess that's it, isn't it? Because you're, like I say, it's all well and good, having a forecast and being ahead in the data, but then you have to come up with a strategy to actually deliver on that forecast. So is that something you're involved in as well, heavily in creating the strategy around how you're actually going to achieve those forecasts as well?
That's my day-to-day, creating the strategy and how we can achieve that forecast, reviewing, what's possible within the department, trying to explain to people within my team that, the best case scenario might not always be the best case scenario for this company, and this is why. And then trying to get, just trying to get buy-in, trying to influence people, trying to understand how we can use our product in better, commercial teams better, just trying to piece all those things together. So it's mainly creating, leading the strategy implementation than the day-to-day doing nowadays. So.
That's great. So it's been incredibly insightful talking to you, Miracle. And a new segment for the podcast is we've got like 5 quick-fire questions here about personal performance for you. So the first one is, what is your favourite book and why? But you may have just answered that because you were just saying you're reading a new book.
Well, I don't know. I started reading loads of books and I picked them up. And I would say in the last 12 months, or in the last 2 years, what's been really helpful to me, especially when I became, a lead and thinking strategically, was a book called Give and Take.
Okay.
I never used to value my soft skills, and that's why I always used to hide behind, the technical things I could do, because they made me feel smart, and I just felt, I'm not. I'm always told I'm too nice as a leader. I never used to value my soft skills until I read Give and Take, and how, there's some people that like to give and to share, and that's not a weakness, that's a strength. So I would say that's a book I give to everyone I mentorize. I was like, because I meet so many people who feel that they wouldn't make good leaders because they're not, the typical like hard and fast, and they're people. And I'm like, you need to read this book by Adam Grant.
I think that's really interesting, isn't it? Because people, I think often when you think of a stereotypical leader, it's often this bold, brash, and it's actually, not necessarily the most effective way for some people in terms of that style of management and leading people. So that's really interesting. My next question for you is, do you have a morning routine in terms of how you prepare yourself for the day?
No.
It's nice and simple.
I snooze my alarm way too many times. I think, when I came back I've recently been away on holiday, and when I came back, I was just, I hate routines. I just like every day to be different, which is why I like SEO.
That's great. Yeah.
And then I was just like begging for a routine. I was like, I need something to jolt
Some structure.
me, some structure. And I think my kids give me structure, because we have to do the school run, and we walk them to school. So that forces me to be like up and prepared and, doing something.
100%. Next, knowing what you know now, what would be your one piece of advice to your 18-year-old self?
You have everything you need to make it. And everything that you need, you have it. Every skill, everything, all of your personality, every part of it is useful. And that's something I didn't realize until very late. So not very late, but until later in life.
I think that's the best answer we've had so far. That's really good. And then my next question to you is, do you have one app on your phone that makes your life easier? Is there one app that really helps you get through, makes you more efficient? Is there anything that really helps you?
Unfortunately, I like to say that, but no. I have so many, I put things in my calendar, set reminders, and I need a second.
Yeah.
I need a PA or someone to help me organize my life.
You know what, our last guest actually said the same thing, just simply the calendar on my phone is the most important app. Because I guess like with yourself, when you're leading a team, you must just have meetings and you're constantly busy. So having that level of organization, like a calendar, is vital, I suppose. My last question to you, Miracle, is who or what inspires you?
That's a very tricky question for me, because I have so many inspirations. I know everyone's not perfect, and I like to be inspired by people who are realistic to me. And so people who I think, this person's life is attainable, or to me. So different things about different people kind of inspire me. Like, I've just finished a counseling course, and I'm absolutely crazy about Esther Perel. I'm just
amazing.
In awe of her. And then, as you can see from the books I've been mentioning, Adam Grant is like my work guru. Different things. Like in the SEO community, I love a read. I like, in terms of confident speaking, Kirsty, there's so many people I've met in works of life. I recently met Petra when I was speaking at MozCon, and she was so lovely, and she was so full of energy, and she was like, we'll wake up, we'll do this and this and that. And she was so organized. I was just like, you're my spirit, take me everywhere, teach me your ways, So in every walks of life, no matter how small, people, I just pick up little things from people,
That's great.
And we're talking about forecasting here. Nicholas Scott taught me about all I know about forecasting, when I was at Erudite. So just different people in different walks of life. I pick so many things up, and they.
That's great. I mean, it's been so insightful. Thank you so much for your time, Miracle. If people wanted to reach out to you or find you online, how can they reach out to you? Do you have a website, or you're on LinkedIn?
I have a website, spelled ridiculously long. It's my entire name. It's my name, and I'm just like, it's my name. I'm going to do it. So
why not?
So good luck.
Yeah, good luck
finding that. But I am on Twitter, Mira_Inam. I have to say, I'm not very good at posting, but I lurk a lot. So if you send me a DM that comes to my email, I will check it. I'm also on LinkedIn as well, my name. So yeah, you can find me in all those places.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time, and have a great weekend. Thanks, Miracle.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.